Hey guys, good evening, everyone. We have 23 odd contestants who have joined in as of now, and there are many more, but we are recording this particular session and we'll be sharing it with all contestants who have not been able to join it. So that won't be a problem. So, first of all, welcome everyone, and I hope your preparation for Wild Clicks has been going on, and we are just 3 days away from this event, and this is the apt opportunity for you guys to learn from a lot of knowledge which will be shared by Roundglass Sustain, who is our knowledge partner regarding how to craft impactful photo stories. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of takeaways from this particular workshop. So let me straight away introduce you to Megha Murthy, Editor-in-Chief, Roundglass Sustain, and she'll take it forward from there.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Shivang, for having us here and for the introduction. So at Roundglass Sustain, we are a not-for-profit that tells stories about India's wild world. And today I have with me two of my colleagues, Radhika Raj, who is the deputy editor at Sustain. Behind a lot of the wonderful.
Anubhav, can I please request you to please be on mute? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I was saying that we have with us Radhika Raj, who is our deputy editor at Sustain and the force behind a lot of the wonderful storytelling that you will see on the platform. We also have with us our photo editor, Amrita Das, who is responsible for all the wonderful imagery and the visual language that you see at Sustain. So we're all really excited to be here today amidst all of you, just before you embark on your photography adventure with Wild Clicks. And at Sustain, we all feel very, very strongly about the need for storytelling. At a time when species are on the brink of extinction and habitats are disappearing without a trace before we even know it, storytellers are really our only hope. Storytellers inspire, they document, they influence, they create advocates for change, right? And we're also living at a time where people have very limited attention spans. And this is really a time when visual storytelling becomes even more central and even more important. An effective story really grabs your interest and your attention immediately. It urges you to give it a moment and think about the story behind it, unlike a film that you have to watch or a story that you have to read. With a photograph, it's almost immediate. That connection is immediate. The resonance is immediate. But there's so many different ways that you can craft stories around your images. And that's really what we're hoping to get you to start thinking about after our conversation today. We want to spark some ideas, we want to inspire some conversations, and we want to encourage you to look a little deeper, sometimes perhaps move a little slower to find that story. So over to you, Radhika.
Thank you so much, Mika, for that lovely introduction and inspiring words. Before we start, can I request everyone to mute, put their phones on mute, put their laptops on mute. We are very happy to take questions at the end of the session. So please put your questions in the chat box and we'll go over them at the end. Now at Sustain, for anybody who knows Sustain, you will immediately notice that we absolutely love photographs. We are extremely visually driven. And if you've seen our website, you'll know that images are meticulously chosen, they are deliberately placed in stories, and very consciously used across the website. Every photograph we use is a story in itself. And our wonderful photo editor, Amrita Das, who many of you may actually already know, and others might meet during the presentation, is behind this curated visual language. Now, some of you may be hobby photographers. Others may want to get They are photographs published in magazines, on websites, or take those photographs in a form of a narrative to a larger audience. So this session will really help you to do that. It's really for you. And for those who may have not thought of this yet, I really hope we can inspire to think of this differently. Now, one of our star sections on the website, one of our absolute favorite sections, is the photo story. And that is also the topic of today's presentation. So let's perhaps start talking about what a photo story is, or what a photo essay is. Now, a photo essay, the term it's self-explanatory, is essentially a visual narrative, a story that ties a series of photos together into a common thread that has a common thread running through it. Now, however, if you want to craft a photo story, just spectacular photos are not enough. It needs a central idea, right? So we've all heard this over and over again, that a photograph can speak 1,000 words, but without a caption, without a narrative, it is difficult to place a photograph in context or even have the desired impact. For instance, I may be looking at a bird, but if I don't know where the bird is it in Bharatpur, is it in Mangalajodi, or what the bird is it threatened? Has it traveled thousands of kilometers to land up here? It doesn't have the desired impact. And that is exactly what a photo essay does. Here in a photo essay, the photos remain the heroes of the story, but the words act like supporting actors. They add value to the photograph, they give it context, they give essential details. And while each photo tells an individual story, it's the words that move the narrative forward, right? Now, before I move on to what a photo essay is, how you need to craft it, I want to quickly talk about why photo essays even matter, or why photographs even matter. And now, all of y'all are photographers or want to be photographers. And I want to reiterate how photographs are an exceptionally important tool, especially, like Megha has already mentioned, in today's world. One, they transcend language. You may not know English. There might be people across the world. You may not even like reading, but a single photograph can have an impact on you. Even for scientific concepts, there are some complex scientific concepts like camouflage in the wild. I might take like 10 sentences to write about camouflage, but a single photograph that shows a species perhaps blending into its background or its surrounding immediately defines the idea of camouflage. You immediately get it. Now, photographs also have the ability to evoke emotion. They stay with you. They remain with you. You remember them for longer periods of time. The third point why photographs are really, really important right now is archival value, historical documentation. Megha's already mentioned about how we are in a world where, our environment is constantly changing. There is one ecological crisis after another. So taking photographs of what you see is really important, because you may or may not see it in that shape or form again. Now, I want to give you a really personal example. In 2021, a team from Roundglass Sustain, I was a part of that team, we traveled to Great Nicobar along the Galathea coast. We went there to document endemic species, the largest leatherback, which is the largest sea turtle in the world. And I'm sure most of you all have heard that there is a large transshipment port that is planned exactly on that area. Now, Galathea will never seem the same again if the port happens, right? And then the photographs that we've taken, the documentation, will be a reminder of what perhaps once existed or what we've lost. A photograph is really important in that sense. It is also an extremely powerful engagement tool. Now, for me, this is a little difficult to accept because I'm a writer, but fewer people are reading. And a photograph on social media has that ability to convey a message. It has that ability to go viral like an article may never have now. Having said that, let's get to the heart of this, how to craft a photo essay. Now, what do you need for a good photo essay? Great photos, that's obvious. But just a series of good photographs does not make a good photo essay. Maybe I can illustrate this with a fantastic photo essay. I absolutely love this. It's on the praying mantis, these bizarrely beautiful creatures. There are about 184 species that are found only in India. And there are some mantises that look like flowers. There are others that look like leaves. But just listing different species or listing the photographs of different species is not enough. So then you need a central holding idea. And here we've used hunting as that idea to talk about the praying mantis. And this angle or this central idea is really what makes it interesting. I want to show you a series of photographs taken by Kalol Mukherjee. This is a sequence. And if you see, you can spot a praying mantis, in fact, a flower mantis, sitting patiently waiting behind a flower for its prey to arrive. And in the next photograph, you see the prey. You see the J-tailed butterfly, the tail J butterfly, show up, and the mantis is still patiently waiting until it grabs hold of it. It consumes its body entirely and then lets the wings fall on the ground. Now, by itself, this series of photographs is exciting. It's a full story in itself. But because it's a photo essay, we've taken the narrative forward. We've also told people or the audience what are those anatomical adaptations that a mantis has to be able to hunt like that. We've spoken about how it completely blends into the background sometimes when it has to do it. We've gone on to talk about that last hunting stage just before it catches its prey. And finally, as the photo essay ends, we've spoken about how the predator, the mantis itself, also becomes a prey. So it makes a full circle. It adds a lot of, it gives the story a direction. It makes it richer. And it all happens because
payment by the payment processor offering application.
You please turn off your
Thank you. Thank you. So the idea of showing you this photo essay is that once you have an angle, it makes everything so much more interesting. Hunting is the angle here. And that's what I want to really focus on in the next few slides is finding an angle. Now, I again want to go back and talk about angles in general. Angles in photography, I'm sure most of you all know, are so important. It is the position you take a photograph from. It is the perspective from which the photograph is taken. Now, this angle, can I please request the participants to...
Can I please request everyone to be on mute, please? Thank you.
As I was saying, angles are exceptionally important in photography. They define the position from where you take a picture, the perspective, and a photograph taken from a certain angle can define the mood of the photograph, the composition. Now, angles are not very different for storytelling as well. They can be the central driving idea of the story, but they can also define the mood and the structure of the narrative that you're planning to tell. For instance, in 2020, we traveled to Kaziranga National Park to document the habitat. Now, we could have come back and told a story about, hey, we went to Kaziranga, here's everything we saw. But then we started thinking of an angle. The easiest angle to do in Kaziranga is talk about a day in the life of a rhino, right? It's the most charismatic species. You see it everywhere. It's a great story to tell. But maybe one of the things that really struck me and caught my eye while I was at Kaziranga, and this was just after the monsoon, are these small water bodies, these pools they call beels, that are across the landscape. And there's a lot of activity around it. It sustains the landscape, it sustains the national park. There are birds that depend on it, there are water buffaloes that depend on it, there are, of course, the rhinos, and maybe a photo essay that talks about the life of a beel and everything it sustains could be a great photo essay. It's a great angle to explore. So having said that, I want to bring you back to some key aspects of what makes a good angle. Of course, one, it should be interesting. It should be intriguing. There could be something surprising, something new, something counterintuitive. It could be timely. Now, for those who want to pitch photo essays to publications, an editor is very likely to ask you, why should I publish the story now? So the timeliness of that angle could be important. It could be something that's in the news, perhaps. Wildfires could make for a great photo essay when it's the season for wildfires, or perhaps it's migratory season. And I'm sure editors are looking for photo essays that talk about the different birds that have arrived, right? So timeliness is crucial, makes for a great angle. Third is that it has to be supported by evidence. It has to be factual. At Sustain, we take fact-checking very, very seriously, and an angle that is fact-checked is very important. And fourth, it must be original. Now, it's always good to do a quick Google search and see what topics around a habitat or a species have already been covered, and then to come up with something that perhaps nobody's thought of. Now, the real key to finding a good angle is good research. And I feel as photographers, perhaps the inclination might be to focus more on lenses, renting equipment, charging things. Maybe some of you all even have a list of species that are on your wish list. This is what I want to photograph. But I would urge everyone, just before you all go to Bharatpur in a couple of days, to really read about the habitat, research it, read about its history, read about its ecology. I know I've heard the theme is wetlands, so maybe think about how wetlands work, how they fit into the larger ecosystem. Why do we need it? Why do different species like birds or animals need wetlands? It's always also a great idea to think of a researcher or a scientist who may have worked in that habitat. You may even be able to get in touch with that person. The person might be in the habitat. And some of our favorite best photo essays have come out of these unlikely collaborations between a photographer and a scientist, a photographer and a writer. So find that person to collaborate with. And finally, when you're in Bharatpur, talk to people, take notes about what you're feeling, what you're seeing, speak to the guides, speak to the locals, and work like a detective to actually tease out that angle, that story that perhaps nobody's written about before. Let's take Bharatpur as an example, since we're talking about Bharatpur. We've done several stories on Bharatpur for the last several years now. And each of these stories is a different angle, same habitat, different angle. I want to start with Abhinandan's story that speaks about inside Bharatpur. Now, Abhinandan is a filmmaker who has a very personal connection with Bharatpur. His grandfather used to photograph with the Maharaja. His father continued that tradition, and Abhinandan is a third generation filmmaker and photographer in the area, right? Now, his film or his video talks about this personal connection. The photo essay that we've worked on, can we look at that photo essay perhaps? Now, this photo essay set in Bharatpur talks about the wetland. Everybody thinks of Bharatpur and immediately thinks of the wetland in particular.
Please mute yourselves. Ravi, could you please mute yourself?
Thank you. So as I was saying, Bharatpur is known to be a wetland, but Bharatpur has other different habitats as well. There are dry savannas, there are woodlands. And this photo essay talks about how no matter what part of Bharatpur you're on, there's always action, there's always drama at every bend. So there's hunting, there is chasing, there are fights. And this photo essay really puts all those high drama, high action-packed photographs together. So it's a really exciting photo essay. I urge you all to go back and look at it and read it. Now, there's also a film we made on Bharatpur that talks about conservation issues, the threats it faces. And then there is one of my favorite films on our website, A Dash of Love, where it doesn't really speak about the habitat, but speaks about the common kingfisher. And this scene about how it's trying to woo a mate. It catches a fish, it offers it, it feeds the female. It's a great series, it's a great scene, it's a great story. And that film just captures that much. So The reason I'm talking about is that when you're at Bharatpur, you don't necessarily have to even focus on the entire habitat. You can find a species, you can find behavior to focus on, you can just focus on a day in their lives. And that itself makes a great photo essay. And there are so many ways to do it, really. Next slide, please. Now, a really, really easy hack, like this is a trick if you want to find an angle, is then to lean on themes. You can fit your photos into a certain theme and you have an angle, right? The first theme I want to talk about and also show the photo essay is habitat. Now, this photo essay focuses on a marine habitat, but it does so with an extremely interesting angle. It focuses on color and light. And the photo essay begins by talking about why is an ocean blue, how the shallow parts of the ocean are greenish and the deeper ones are deeper blue. But as you move on, it unpacks the idea of color and light even more. It talks about camouflage and blending into the background. It talks about how there are some creatures that sparkle and shine, and why do they do that? There are others that talk about creatures that glow. And finally, it talks about all these adaptations and how they come together to make this marine habitat an extremely, extremely exciting place. I want to mention that this is a fairly large habitat, but you don't have to only focus on large-scale habitats, perhaps. We've done photo essays that focus on a single oak tree and everybody who visits it, woodpeckers, squirrels, civets. And that itself is an exciting photo essay, right? Or we've focused on the Brahmaputra River and photographed it from different angles and told stories along the way. So a habitat can be really wide. Like a habitat, you can also focus on a species. This is a photo essay, and I'm not going to show it to you all, but it's a photo essay on the red fox and how it navigates its life in Spiti, how hard it is to hunt, what are the strategies it uses. And it's also a landscape that sees a lot of human intervention now and development. What happens to the red fox then? The third theme you can use, and this is my favorite, is time. And I love it, especially because you can really be creative with it. It can be flexible. The photo essay that I want to show you quickly is from Galathea, is from Great Nicobar. Now, this is very personal to me. This is one of my favorite nights of my life. We were waiting at the Galathea coast, the pristine, pristine Galathea coast, waiting in the middle of the night for the leatherback, which is the world's largest sea turtle, to show up. And then she did to lay eggs on the shore. We saw her build the nest, cover it up, camouflage it, and leave. This happened all under magical stars, while we were bitten by sandflies. There were people from the forest department who collected the eggs to go to the hatchery. And the next morning, another nest, we saw it hatch, and little turtles make their way into the ocean. Absolutely spectacular night. And this photo essay captures it all, from the leatherback to our own emotions, to our excitement. There's so much drama in it, and there are natural history facts. It's a great photo essay, if I may say so. Please go ahead and read it when you get the chance. The fourth is urban biodiversity. And the reason I want to talk about urban biodiversity is that this photo essay, which is on the life cycle of damselflies and dragonflies, was shot by Ripon Biswas, who lives in Cooch Behar in West Bengal, around his extremely urban home. All photographs have been shot around his home. So to be able to even do a photo essay, or photograph a photo essay, you may not need to go to Spiti or Galathea or a marine habitat. It might just be in your backyard. The options are endless, really. Now, there are two photo essays I want to talk about. One that focuses on conservation issues, and the other that focuses on the Pelassus cat. The reason I want to talk about them is that both are situated in the same habitat, the Hanle Valley. The first one focuses on the marshes and how they're ecological rich. They're a key biodiversity area. The marshes are an important wetland, and how they support a number of species, from the Kiang to the Pelassus cat itself. And it focuses on threats, how the land use is changing, how the marshes are threatened. Oh, there are marmots, there are pikas, black-necked cranes. But the second photo essay, also, by the way, both photo essays are shot by Ritiman Mukherjee. The second photo essay talks about Ritiman Mukherjee's chase of the Pelas's cat. You know, he had been wanting to photograph it for a very long time. It's a far more personal narrative, really. And then he saw it in a granary. He followed the cat, how it went about its day, to finally coming across a mother and a kitten pair, and then photographing them. Now, the same photographer, same habitat, similar species, but two very, very different narratives. One is very, very serious. The other one is cute, playful, frumpy, about a cute, grumpy cat, right? So, you know, angles can really change the story you want to tell. Now, the third one I want to talk about, I'm going to take you to a little behind the scenes, has been written by Megha Murthy, our editor you met earlier. Now, Megha had traveled to Javai to document the rusty spotted cat. And while she was there, a lot of the spotting of the cat or hanging out happened at this person Raju's house. This is his house. And she quickly realized that while she was at the house, his mother, his sister were very used to the wildlife around it. You know, while she was flipping roti, she could see the leopard. While she was cooking, she could see the jungle cat. And then that became the heart of the photo essay. The photo essay is written from the perspective of Raju and his family, who watch this wildlife all around them on an everyday basis. Now that is Raju, and that's that spectacular view from his house. So it's great to, even when you're doing a wildlife photo essay, you need not only document the species, really, you can tell it from the perspective of of people, forest guards, guides, locals who live around the landscape as well. And finally, this is a research-based photo essay. I don't want to show it, but it's great to use research or scientific papers and then use photographs or a photo essay to break down jargon. This photo essay is really about mimicry. And if you read the scientific papers on mimicry, it might be hard for a layperson to understand. But the moment you put photographs together and tell the narrative, it really becomes accessible, interesting, even fun. Now, if you see in the thumbnail, there's a praying mantis completely camouflaged in the background. And that's what makes this interesting. Now, having said that, and because I know you're going to Bharatpur and the theme is wetlands, I want to leave you all with a set of questions that will help you perhaps find a new angle or find a new interesting way of talking about the photographs you clicked, right? Maybe think about why wetlands are important to start with, the most obvious questions. Why is it important to our survival? How does it play a role in the survival of different species who arrive there? Do you have a personal connection with the landscape? What season are you going in? And what is so particular or perhaps special about it? Is there a certain species you're excited about? Is there a breeding behavior or some sort of aspect of that species you'd like to capture? Maybe talk to a researcher or find a journal paper about it. Is there something that you're expecting to surprise you? How does this wetland, this particular wetland, fit into the larger ecosystem of Bharatpur? Think about the key players. Of course, there's wildlife, but people, conservationists, guides, cycle rickshaw drivers who could also become characters in your story, just like Raju, right? And finally, think about the kind of emotions that you want your readers to feel while viewing your photo essay. Now, I'm really, really hoping, before we move on to the next half of the session, that these questions have sparked some ideas, have gotten you excited, and have gotten you started on some sort of path to think of a photo essay that you can craft from this place and from the exercise you do in this spectacular wetland. I want to invite Amrita Das, who's our photo editor, to take over and do our next session. She's going to talk about pitching, she's going to talk about ethics, and she's going to show you some spectacular work with some of our favorite photographs. Amrita, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Radhika. That was So detailed, so insightful. And yeah, I agree completely with you that finding an angle is perhaps the most important part of crafting a photo essay and um, saying good visual stories. Um, but I'd like to take the conversation forward and let's talk about what do you do once you have all these fantastic images? How do you put a photo essay together? So this is where I'll request all of you to stop thinking like photographers and start thinking like visual storytellers. And the first step to doing this is to make a selection or group your photographs till you see a common theme or a common story emerge from all these photographs. At this stage, it's not very important to have all the details, how you're going to go about it. What do you exactly want to say in the story? Not important. Just see what is the story that's coming out. You can always build around it at a later stage. As Radhika has already emphasized, that finding the angle is the most important part of it. Once you have the angle built around it, and I want to illustrate this point further by talking a little about this photo story that macro photographer Abhijit APC pitched us. He was photographing pseudoscorpions over a period of time. Now, what are pseudoscorpions? They are tiny arachnids with scorpion-like pincers, and he was observing their habitat, their diet, their behavior. And eventually, Abhijit chose to pitch a photo story on the hunting strategies of these arachnids. While the photo story focuses on the hunting strategies, we also do mention other aspects of the pseudoscorpions too. So now you have a theme, you have an angle in mind. The next step is to start researching different publications who may be interested in this idea. At this stage, it is imperative that you check two things. First is if the idea is going to be relevant to them. And second, if they have published any such story on their website already. Can we move on to the next slide? The next action step is to pitch. So what is a pitch? A pitch is your central idea or the angle of your story in a few sentences, supported with some of the photographs that you've taken. Put your pitch together. We'll talk in detail a bit more about pitching in the next few minutes. So once you've put your pitch together, send it to a prospective editor and they have accepted it. Just be prepared for a few rounds of discussions with them. So just to take the example forward of pseudoscorpions, when Abhijit pitched the idea to us, I thought we needed a bit more images to support the photo story. So I got on a call with him and had a few discussions. I also needed some information about the images. These conversations are very natural to any editorial process. After that, the photo essay comes together with text, with photos, and a complete narrative. And then there are, of course, rounds of fact-checking, playback, all of that happens. And finally, it is published. This is how we work at Sustain, and largely how most other publications work too. I'd like to show you the photo essay on pseudoscorpions. As you can see, we start the photo essay by, of course, introducing the pseudoscorpions, and then we provide context to how really small they are. In this photograph, you can see the pseudoscorpion alongside a beetle. That's really how small they are. And then we go on to mention their anatomy and how they use their body and the pincers to inject venom into their prey. And apart from that, they also use it as a tight grip when they want to pull their prey into a hole or a crevice. And then there is also a third function, if it was possible, of the pincers, which works as a mode of transport. when they want to hitchhike, or even in certain cases, fly if they want to. So it's very interesting to see the various aspects of a critter as small as a pseudoscorpion in a photo essay, which primarily is only talking about the hunting strategies, but we extend it because we're building around the angle of the story. Now, I would like to touch upon the best practices while you're pitching. As I just discussed a few minutes ago, that clearly illustrate what do you, in your pitch, clearly illustrate what do you want to say or show in the photo essay. So have your central idea clear. Send it to us in a nice set of crisp sentences and words. And also, along with it, send your strongest and most relevant images supporting this idea. In your pitch, do tell us how you visualize the story. Also, in case you want to collaborate with anybody else, like a writer or any other photographer, do mention that. What interests me the most is that I would like to know, why are you in the best suited position to say or to share this photo story? So if you have any personal anecdotes, if you have a personal connection to the habitat or to the subject or to the idea, please do send all of these in, because it just adds more value to your pitch. Moving on to what you should not do when sending a pitch. Please don't send us Google Drive full of images or a PDF file with the entire story written. We really don't want to see everything, and quite honestly, we don't have the time. It's always a good idea to do a good cursory search to see if a similar idea has been published in the publication. And if it has been, tweak your pitch. Tell us how it's going to be different from the story that's already been published. Okay, I've said a bunch of things, and having said all of that, I do want you all to know that be open to the inputs of the editor, because sometimes we have certain ideas that we want to see and take shape as photo essays, but it doesn't, because for a number of reasons. And then suddenly, one of you will show us an image, and then immediately we can visualize the entire photo essay together beautifully, actually, and quite naturally. And to illustrate this point, I will talk about a photo essay that we crafted on the Saras crane. For the longest time, I was trying to put together a photo essay on the Saras crane, but I couldn't find a different angle, because we had covered the courtship rituals of the cranes quite extensively on Sustain, and I obviously didn't want to repeat that. Then one day I saw a photograph of the crane with a UP Roadways bus behind it. So it was Ritaman Mukherjee's image. I immediately called him and I asked him if he has more images from the shoot. And thankfully he did. And then immediately I put together a photo story on the Saras crane, but from a different angle. And the angle was of the bird living among rice fields around human habitation. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about the photographer's voice. As we know that photography is a form of art, and every form of art reflects the values, the ethos of the artist. What you see, what you feel, how you emotionally connect to the subject or to the moment, and how this connection translates into an image, these are all visible in your final creation when you create an image. In course of time, this becomes the photographer's niche, or it becomes their voice. It extends itself further as the practice and the connection deepens to become the purpose of the photographers, the purpose of the photography for the photographer. I know it may sound a little confusing, so let me illustrate this point better by drawing your attention to two photographers. Both of their work is very personal, and they also reimagine familiar places in different ways. It also honestly has made me look at these familiar places very differently. And of course, their work has taken visual storytelling to a different angle, to a different level altogether. The first is Sarang Nayak. Sarang has been documenting the intertidal zone of Bombay for many, many years. His images have, of course, been used in many photo essays, many stories, but they have also become tools of awareness and advocacy. So when the construction of Bombay's coastal road project was on, his images which also show the marine biodiversity in this area, they were used by people to file petitions and to campaign against the construction. As you can see, the marine biodiversity is quite extensive and also quite special in Bombay. The other photographer that I want to talk about is Jitesh Pai. Jitesh, during the many COVID lockdowns, developed a strange but fascinating obsession. He started documenting spiders. I found it a little weird initially when he told me, but it turned out very interesting. What happened with his obsession is that those led to conversation with experts, and he realized that he was documenting natural history behavior that was not known to science. So soon he was collaborating with scientists to publish scientific papers based on his observations. But what's most interesting to me is that his relationship with these spiders changed. And if it could get even more interesting, is that some of his family members also started looking at spiders differently. Let's hear what he has to share with us.
We can't hear it, Radhika.
Radhika, the audio is not there.
Please share sound.
Sorry, I'll just do that.
I remember that day very clearly. A few weeks ago, during a walk with Karnataka Spider Club, I had seen a BBC documentary on the Portia spider. In his booming voice, Sir David Attenborough spoke of the spider's superpowers. How this jumping spider can leap about 50 times its body length and hunt spiders that are 3 times larger. I was eager to see it, and then, just as I was sitting on my laptop, working in Sanur, my mother's home near Karkala town in Karnataka, a spider hopped on the screen. I looked very closely. It was Portia. I couldn't believe it. So in 2016, I started photographing small critters out of sheer curiosity. But every time I went looking for something, I found it right in my backyard or within my home. I was hoping to see a crab spider, and I spotted it on a potted plant in Sanur. Back home in my little balcony in heart of Bangalore city, I even saw colorful spiders like Chrysilla. Soon, the backyard became my sanctuary. When the pandemic struck and when we were confined indoors, my hobby turned into an obsession. So we shuffled between homes, a week in my mother's home in Sanur, another with my in-laws' home in Mangalore. I turned my lens on all these backyards. An entire photo essay on poultry spider that spends the day masquerading as leaves or twigs was shot in my in-laws' backyard in Mangalore city. Eventually, I was documenting the naturalistic behaviors that were not known to science. The observations on Bretis singulatus jumping spider was turned into a research paper published in Pecamia, a journal for scientific research. Over the years, I documented over 250 species of arthropods across these 3 backyards. But for me, some of the most heartening moments were to see how my family members started reacting to these critters. My in-laws were initially scared for me as I stuck my hands into the bushes. But a few weeks ago, my mother-in-law spotted something and called me immediately. I rushed and was shocked to see that it was a tarantula, a large hairy spider. It bit her, but she did not try to kill it. Over the years, observing them has changed how I think of them and myself. Spiders are most intelligent and savage predators while hunting, real softies when they care for their young, especially female spiders who guard their egg sacs either by carrying them on their abdomen, in their jaws, or even drag them wherever they go. Everybody knows that spiders build excellent webs, but once their job is done, I have seen them roll up the web and feed on it, making sure nothing goes waste. They have taught me to recycle and treat everything with patience. Backyards can seem like the most ordinary places, but thanks to photography, my backyards have turned into mini laboratories, where every single day the most entertaining wild theatre plays out. Nobody drives away spiders in any of our homes or backyards anymore. No pesticides are used. However, one problem remains. My wife complains that I take far better images of spiders than I do of her.
Thank you, Radhika, for playing that. It's always heartening to see this video. Now, since we've spoken about the photographer's voice, I want to get started with visual language. Now, your visual language is quite important when it comes to telling impactful stories through your images. Now, what do I mean by visual language? Well, visual language means the composition, the creativity, the tonality, or even the style of the image that you use. Just like writers have their own individual styles to write a story or an essay, so do photographers. The visual language of some photographers is so strong that even when it comes to wildlife and nature photographers, it's so strong that we can often guess who has taken an image no sooner we see the image. For example, people who are familiar with Dhritiman Mukherjee's work can almost immediately guess that this is an image of his. He has taken this image. Dhritiman believes that one of the main purposes of his photography is to lend itself to the conversation of conservation. And so his photographs always tend to show a broader context or a larger picture. This image from Barren Island in the Andaman Sea, here we can see, the erupting volcano. We can see the dry but fertile lava bed. Then we can also see a very healthy coral life. Most of Dhritiman's images are well saturated and vibrant because I think it's because he wants more and more people to be interested in this conversation of wildlife and conservation. On the other hand, Shivang Mehta's images are far more earthy and muted. I feel these are inspired from his love for big cats, but I could be wrong. We need to ask him. Anyway, coming back to this image, I can see an entire story unravel here. Shivang piques the curiosity of the audience by keeping his main subject in the background and out of focus. So anybody who sees the image, at least for the first few seconds, has to take a guess or at least understand why this herd of deer is trying to run. Moving on to the next slide, which shows Rathika Ramaswamy's image. Now, Rathika's body of work is very, very visually diverse. But I think we can safely say that she aims to freeze a moment. One of her most famous photographs is that of a rose-ringed parakeet attacking a monitor lizard. Now, well, that image has a lot of drama. My favorite is this image of hers, where we don't see so much drama when the sub-adult tigress makes an eye contact with her prey just for a fraction of a second. But every time I see this image, I am always amazed at how intensely the tigress is looking. And coming back to Sarang's images, well, what can I say about Sarang's images? I think the two words that best describe his images are that they look like visual poems to me. His images have a dreamy effect. The warm tones are very highly saturated, and he uses reflections very aesthetically in them, as we can see in this image, which is a self-portrait. But he's also showing the tide pool very nicely. Before we conclude, I just want to take a few minutes and discuss the ethics of wildlife photography, because no conversation is complete without talking about the ethics involved in this. Firstly, it's always a good idea to maintain a safe physical distance from your subject. This, of course, means no crowding. If you have to use hides, please do. But the idea is to be as invisible as possible. This also means that you need to turn off all your the camera sounds, and also your phone should be on DND. I'm sure everything can wait for a few moments. Most species, as you may know, are sensitive to light, so please don't use any flash on them, especially nocturnal ones. If you're doing macro photography, radiant diffusers are a good alternative because they soften the light. Don't use calls to attract birds. This may disrupt their courtship rituals, or birds may have to leave when they're guarding the nests. Nest and den photography should be avoided at all costs. This may cause abandonment of chicks or pups. They may sense the presence of an intruder, and they may want to move the litter to another den, which may not be as safe as the present den. In the fifth point, I'd like to say that please don't handle any reptiles or amphibians. They have sensitive skin, and the chemicals from our skin can get transferred onto theirs quite easily. Look out for signs of distress if you are documenting any such species. I know this is rather broad, so I will use the most popular example, that of the green vine snake. We've seen a lot of images of the green vine snake showing the checkered pattern on its body. That is a threat response of the snake. It would help to do a cursory and a basic search before you go into such a habitat of the kind of species you may interact or encounter there, so that you at least have some idea of the threat responses and the stress responses that these animals, reptiles, any of them may have. If your subject is stressed, please walk away immediately. Don't feed or bait wildlife, well, because it's just wrong. It's a good idea to respect the habitat, so please be mindful of where you step or where you're driving. There are ground nesting birds. There are rare and unique wildflowers and plants. There are critters which we may miss if we are not careful. And I will just touch upon the ethics when it comes to post-production or when you're editing your images. Cropping, of course, by all means is acceptable. We, of course, can crop our images for a tighter shot, to show better composition, whatever it may be. But please don't move individual elements from a photograph. This means that you're manipulating the image and misrepresenting the habitat or the subject, whatever it may be. And lastly, I know that wildlife photography is a lot about capturing the moment, but I'm sure there is space for chance encounters. And these chance encounters, I think, will happen when we are completely immersed in the habitat and aware of the silence around us. So it's a good idea sometimes to cut the chase and allow nature to unravel itself. That's it from us today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, please do type them in the chat and we'll try our best to answer them.
Thank you, Amrita, and thank you, Radhika, for a very insightful discussion. I think there are few questions which I'll address those questions. But before that, first of all, for all the contestants, it was very emotional for me to see all these images from Sarang Nayak and all. And just for you to be inspired, Sarang is also an ex-Wildclicks winner. So, when you tell good photo stories and when you tell good stories, this is the level where you can reach from a career point of view. So, I mean, this was quite a inspiring thing for all of you guys to see. And one question which I would like to address on behalf of all contestants, because we had the theme of photo stories in the last edition of Wildclicks as well. And, I could see that a lot of people were struggling when it came to formulating a narrative around their photo story once they had created one. So, and the common thing which was going on in the minds of people was that, oh, we don't know how to write. So how do we do it? So I think this is an apt platform where on their behalf, I'll try to address this question that how should the contestants narrate their photo stories? Of course, we as their mentors, we can help many of them. But at the end of the day, they are the photographers and they have to put a few words behind those images so that the jury can understand that story properly. So what are your thoughts about this?
Can I go first, Radhika?
Sure, Megha.
Yeah. All right. I just, couple of things. I think the first thing that really holds us back when it comes to people who don't write, and when they need to write, the first thing that holds us back is our fear, right? The fact that I am not a writer. You do not have to be a writer to write. Everybody has an idea, everybody has thoughts. It's just about putting that down in the best possible way. But when it comes to creating a narrative around your photographs, the first thing that you have to remember is that you are the one who's taken that photograph. So there's obviously a thought process behind you having taken that photograph, right? So try to translate that down on paper. In the best, language is never a consideration, right? Put that down in the best possible way you can. And that is a great starting point. And then a lot of the questions that Radhika, brought up in the course of her, when she was explaining about angles, think about what is it about that. What were you thinking when you took that photograph at that moment? Why did that moment seem interesting to you? Why did you think that was worth documenting? Have you seen anything like that before, right? What was your first impression what was your first feeling when you got that shot? These are all things that you can potentially put into a caption or put into a narrative when you're writing it. And drop that whole fear about the fact that I cannot write. It doesn't matter. Once you put in whatever ideas you have, whatever your thought process is, it will take shape on its own. And always ask for help. That's always something I tell everyone. Do you want to add anything, Radhika or Amrita?
Oh, I just wanted to add that if you're really, really worried about writing, two things. One, you can collaborate with the writer, or two, at least for Sustain, when we get great photographs and the writing isn't best, we often commission a writer to work with the photographers. We've interviewed photographers and put their narrative into words as well. So there are multiple ways of doing it, but just because you feel like you cannot write is not something that should stop anyone really.
Also, I just want to add in that because even I think very visually, if somebody tells me to write, I'm just frightened. I freeze. So what has helped me a lot is that sometimes I record what I want to say. I put in an audio and I listen to it at a later stage. And then I pick up chunks from it and I just type it out. And then I will just make it a bit more crisp. And that's how I can pitch. If you are apprehensive of your writing skills, then you can always collaborate with the writer, like Radhika has mentioned. And we are always there, to build a narrative. If you know what your angle is, but you don't know how to put it together, we are there. Come to us with your photographs. We will help you put it together. It's never a problem.
But I think some of these questions are also directly in the context of wild clicks and writing.
I guess
Yeah.
For the contestants, what Radhika and Amrita just said, we guys are there as mentors. So in case you are struggling with your writing part, you can always get in touch with us and help you out, provided your story is strong, so we can help structuring that thing in written words as well. So we have a question out here. Someone is asking, could you please guide us on how to find a subject matter expert in a specific scientific field to gain deeper knowledge and potentially explore opportunities for collaboration? Or one or two examples will help.
I mean, we are living in the world of the internet, so it's frankly, all these resources are available online. For example, if you're doing a story on, hornbills, you can look up various organizations like the NCF and see who are the scientists who are working with hornbills in that, from different landscapes, and reach out to them. All their email addresses are available. Just drop in a mail. Very often, young researchers, scientists are all very happy to have, photographer help them document their research. A lot of them are open to such collaborations. In terms of an example, Radhika mentioned that I was in Jawai earlier to do some stories on the rusty spotted cat. And the rusty spotted cat is one of those species that's really not been studied much at all, right? So even to understand, a lot of the photographs were taken by Ridwan Mukherjee, but there was such little understanding of the behavior that was there in research papers that I had to literally sit down with Shomita Mukherjee, who's a researcher from SACON, and she researches all small cats. Literally sit with her, show her the photographs, and ask her, what does this really mean? What is this in terms of behavior? Is this something you've encountered before? So sometimes having conversations like that also helps. And if you have interesting images like that, you can always reach out, email scientists, researchers who are usually more than happy to help.
Thank you, Megha. Guys, in case there are any more questions, you can probably address right now. Okay, there's a question regarding the contest. I'll address that later. So I see that there are a lot of people who have not attended this live session right now. So we are recording this entire conversation and it will be posted on YouTube as a private link for the time being, and it will be shared on the WildClicks contestant group. So for everyone who has missed this session, you'll have access to this conversation. So with that, I guess, it's been a very, very insightful session from Radhika, Amrita, and thank you, Megha, for helping to put up this entire session. And now we can just wish all these contestants all the best for season 10 of Wild Clicks, and let's hope that they come out with impactful stories which can even go on the Roundglass platform.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, and wish you all the very best. And we are very excited to see, all your creative outcomes from Wild Clicks. And we are hoping that, this will build a whole body of young storytellers and photographers who will be ambassadors for the wild world. So thank you so much.
Thanks a ton. Thanks a ton. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you guys in Bharatpur in the coming few days.